Welcome back to the channel, bringing you the latest news from around the world. First of all, subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon for more updates. You need to hear this if you're a trader or investor. The news hit trading floors like a lightning strike. In an instant, the energy in the room shifted from routine anticipation to raw, unfiltered panic. Phones rang off the hook, traders shouted over one another, and the usual hum of commerce was replaced by a cacophony of disbelief. It was clear that something extraordinary was unfolding, something that would ripple far beyond Wall Street. Just after 10 a.m. Eastern Time, the Supreme Court's decision flashed across screens worldwide. The alert was unmistakable, and within seconds, newsrooms from New York to Hong Kong scrambled to interpret the implications. Financial terminals lit up with urgent headlines, and the world's attention zeroed in on the sudden, dramatic turn of events. The Dow Jones plummeted over 1,000 points, traders in panic. The numbers on the ticker seemed almost surreal, dropping faster than anyone could process. For many, it was the most dramatic market movement they had ever witnessed in real time. This wasn't just another volatile day, it was a seismic shock. Analysts huddled in corners, trying to make sense of the chaos, while seasoned traders stared at their screens in disbelief, knowing that history was being made before their eyes. The chaos spread globally, with London and Tokyo markets reacting sharply. As the sun rose in Asia and set in Europe, the aftershocks of the Supreme Court's decision reverberated through every major financial center, leaving no market untouched. The foundation of global trade, contorted by tariffs, snapped back violently. Years of carefully negotiated supply routes and pricing structures were suddenly thrown into question, as businesses scrambled to understand what the new rules would mean for their bottom lines. Currencies fluctuated wildly. The US dollar weakening, foreign exchange markets became a battleground, with investors seeking safe havens and speculators trying to capitalize on the chaos. The volatility was unprecedented, and no one could predict where the dust would settle. The headline was stark. Supreme Court strikes down Trump tariffs. It was a moment that would be dissected by pundits and policymakers for weeks to come, as the world tried to grasp the full significance of the ruling. Businesses that had reconfigured supply chains faced a dizzying blow. Years of adaptation and investment were suddenly upended, forcing companies to rethink strategies overnight and brace for a new era of uncertainty. Commodity prices cratered, agricultural futures surged. The ripple effects reached deep into the heartland, as farmers and producers scrambled to adjust to the new reality, unsure whether to celebrate or brace for more turmoil. The court's ruling erased a policy, creating a vacuum. In the absence of clear direction, uncertainty reigned, and the search for stability became the new priority for governments and businesses alike. Business leaders and governments asked, "What happens now?" The world watched, waiting for answers as experts debated the next steps and the true impact of the decision. The market's frantic response was about the profound uncertainty ahead. In that moment, one thing was clear. The day the tariffs tumbled would be remembered as a turning point, a day when the rules of global trade were rewritten in real time. In April 2025, President Trump announced the Liberation Day tariffs. A sweeping decree imposed a minimum 10% tariff on nearly all imports. The goal: reshore American industry and declare economic independence. Using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, Trump bypassed Congress. Critics argued the law was for sanctions, not restructuring global trade. Opponents claimed tariff power belongs to Congress, not the president. The administration framed the debate as a struggle for America's future. This set the stage for a monumental legal showdown over executive power. The legal fight against the tariffs began immediately. Challengers argued Trump usurped Congress's power to impose taxes. A federal appeals court ruled the president exceeded IEPA authority. The Trump administration defended the tariffs as a legitimate response. The stage was set for a historic Supreme Court decision on presidential power. The case posed a dilemma for the Supreme Court's conservatives. Judicial deference to the executive clashed with the major questions doctrine. This doctrine requires clear congressional authorization for significant actions. Justices like Brett Kavanaugh faced a test of their legal principles. Would they curb executive overreach or defer to presidential power? The decision hinged on whether conservative justices would join the liberal wing. The fate of billions in commerce rested on this internal balancing act. In a closely watched case, the Supreme Court delivered a 6-3 decision that struck down the controversial tariffs imposed by the executive branch. This ruling sent shockwaves through Washington, as it directly challenged the president's authority to act unilaterally on major economic policies. The decision was seen as a pivotal moment in the ongoing debate over the limits of executive power, especially in matters that have far-reaching consequences for the nation's economy and international relations. Writing for the majority, Chief Justice John Roberts emphasized the importance of the separation of powers, underscoring the major questions doctrine. He argued that when the president takes actions with significant national impact, such as imposing sweeping tariffs, those actions must be clearly authorized by Congress. Roberts warned that allowing the executive to bypass legislative approval would upset the careful balance established by the Constitution. The court's decision made it clear that presidential actions of this magnitude require explicit congressional approval. This means that the president cannot act alone when it comes to imposing broad economic measures that affect the entire country. Instead, such decisions must be debated and authorized by lawmakers, ensuring that the voices of the people, through their representatives, are heard. Justices Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett joined the majority opinion, reinforcing the court's commitment to maintaining strong checks and balances on executive power. Their support highlighted a growing consensus within the court that the president's authority should not go unchecked, especially in areas where Congress has clear constitutional responsibilities. However, the dissenting justices argued that the court had overstepped its bounds by second-guessing the president's judgment on matters of national security and trade. They warned that this decision could hinder the executive's ability to respond swiftly to urgent threats, and believed the president should retain some flexibility in these areas. Ultimately, the ruling reaffirmed Congress's constitutional power over taxation and trade policy. By requiring legislative approval for major tariff decisions, the court strengthened the role of Congress in shaping the nation's economic future and ensured greater accountability in government. The decision clarified that the president must now pursue tariffs and similar economic measures through the legislative process, rather than by executive order alone. This shift will likely change how future administrations approach trade policy and executive authority. In the end, the Supreme Court's verdict reshaped the boundaries of presidential power, setting a powerful precedent that will influence the relationship between the executive and legislative branches for years to come. The Supreme Court's decision sent shockwaves across the globe, reverberating far beyond the walls of the courtroom. News outlets from every continent broke the story, and world leaders quickly took notice, understanding that the ruling would have implications not just for the United States, but for the entire international order. Leaders in Europe and Asia expressed relief, seeing it as a return to predictability and stability in global trade relations. Many foreign governments had been anxiously watching the case, worried about the potential for escalating trade disputes and economic uncertainty. Stock markets rallied in response, with investors betting that the immediate threat of a trade war had subsided. The decision was seen as a signal that the rules-based international system would hold, at least for now. However, uncertainty about the future of U.S. trade policy remained. Analysts cautioned that while the ruling provided clarity, it also left open questions about how the administration and Congress would move forward. Would Congress work with the president on a new trade framework, or would partisan divisions stall progress? The coming months would test the ability of lawmakers to find common ground. For everyday Americans, the ruling meant the possibility of lower prices for imported goods, from electronics to clothing. Retailers and importers welcomed the decision, hoping it would ease supply chain pressures and bring relief to consumers. Yet, workers in industries that had benefited from protective tariffs now faced a more precarious future. Some worried about job security and the potential for plant closures as global competition intensified. The decision highlighted the ongoing tension between globalization and rising nationalism. Debates erupted across the country, with some celebrating the embrace of open markets, while others called for renewed protection of American industries. Ultimately, the ruling reinforced a fundamental principle. Even in times of crisis, the president is bound by constitutional limits. The checks and balances of American democracy remained intact, serving as a reminder of the enduring strength of the nation's institutions. As the country looks ahead, the Supreme Court affirmed that the path forward must follow constitutional processes, ensuring that the rule of law guides the nation through uncertain times.